You're watching News at Prime. Let's get into this conversation now. Families of disabled children who were defrauded by millionaire lawyer Zuko Nonxuba are a step closer to getting their monies after years of suffering. The Legal Practice Council is calling on the former clients of Nonxuba to come forward for funds that have been recovered from his trust account, and these are going to be distributed to them. The controversial lawyer fleeced the mothers of the bedridden children out of millions of rand, which were successfully claimed on their behalf as medical negligence settlements. Well, let's get more now. And we're joined by Ignatius Briel. He's the Gauteng Director from the Legal Practice Council Office. Mr. Briel, thank you very much for your time. Firstly, how many families are we talking about here that you are searching for?
The estimate is around about 20 to 25 when we're talking about the medical negligence claims.
Yeah.
But I think what we must also remember is besides the medical negligence claims, there are numerous road accident fund victims as well.
Yeah.
We are really trying very hard to make contact with these family members. Some of them have been represented recently by different lawyers who've been trying to assist them, and they've been willing to make the contact details available. But I think also what you must remember, a lot of these victims are actually in very rural, remote areas.
Yeah.
So from the information that we've received from sources like the SIU, some of these people live in areas where it takes you 4 to 5 hours just to reach the village where they are living. So those are the ones that we are aware of.
Yeah.
But despite attempts to make contact with them, they are very hesitant. So whatever the reason might be, whether it's being scared of intimidation, whether it is not being aware of their rights,
yeah.
I'm not sure. But it's very important for us to make contact with them so that we can be sure who these victims are who now need to be compensated.
At a later stage in this conversation, I'm going to ask you to give us details of where these families can contact your office. Let me focus the attention on the medical negligence claims. Specifically, we're talking the controversial lawyer Zuko Nonxuba. At the last media report that I read, in the trust account that you say you have now been able to successfully access, there was an amount of 105 million rand. How much money is in there, and is all of that now going to be taken out for distribution?
So the process, once there is evidence that there's a shortage on the trust account, whatever money we do have in trust gets paid over to the Legal Practice Fidelity Fund. So they act as an insurance of last resort to cover especially instances like this where victims have been taken advantage of, the money has been stolen. So the money that we've recovered, that 105 million, has been paid over to the LPFF, and they will now administer the claims that come in as an insurance provider for the cover for these victims. So the 105 million has been retained. The estimate is that there should have been significantly more in the account. And we are working together with the MEC for Health, we are working together with the Road Accident Fund to make sure that we establish exactly how much money was supposed to be in that account.
And you mentioned the significantly more amount. I think some of the figures I've read was anything upwards of 300 million. Is that the correct region? That should have been in that account.
That is what we are estimating. The regrettable part of this whole scenario is, even if you look at the court papers that have been filed, it's the LPC's case that the documents that has been filed by Mr. Nonxuba does not clearly show what money is supposed to be there. So this is the bits and pieces that we've been able to establish through our contacts with the MEC for Health especially, to try and establish how much money should have been there.
What about attaching his assets beyond the trust account? Is that something that you are willing to explore?
It's definitely something that can be done. The the court order does allow for the LPC or the curator of the trust account to do whatever needs to be done to recover the funds that are there. But again, I think the technicality which people might not understand is that when we start looking at recovery of funds through attachment of assets, things like that, you've got a lot of other role players. So firstly, the LPFF is involved because they now stand in for the loss that's been suffered. So they've got a first right of recovering whatever funds can be recovered. Then you've also got the legal institutions, your SAPS, the SIU, the Hawks, who also have a stake in looking at the funds that can be recovered from those. So that is something that will be done. It might not be done straight away.
Okay. I did promise earlier that we were going to ask you for contact details, but I'm also realizing that this is a national television platform. So I'm going to ask that your details, you leave them with our producer so that whoever calls in, we're able to give them that information. But while we conclude on this Zuko Nonxuba matter, the families, as you say, some of them may not be aware, some of them may be scared to hear the word Zuko Nonxuba because in all probability they've dealt with the worst in relation to this. So how else have you been trying to get a hold of these families? Because I imagine you're doing this now so that you raise awareness.
So I think the primary focus has been to work with the Special Investigations Unit, and they've really done sterling work. I think the capacity that they have, even though it's also slightly limited, is vastly more than the capacity we have in terms of reaching these family members. So they've done a tremendous job of visiting these villages, visiting the family members. As I've indicated, we've had a discussion with an attorney who had been acting recently for some of these victims, who said that he's willing to share those contact details, and we have requested those contact details from him. We also have appointed tracers, professional tracers, who will assist us to trace these members. I think one of the stumbling blocks is just to be sure exactly who the beneficiaries are supposed to be. Because without proper trust records, it's difficult for the LPC to say who are these beneficiaries. And until now, since August last year, when the Constitutional Court finally made a ruling in this matter, Mr. Nonxuba has not been cooperating in providing us with these trust records, or even providing us with these office files.
How complicated is this process going to be for the families, Mr. Briel? Because they've gone through so much already. I was recounting to my colleague a little earlier about the image I have in my mind of these children. They are severely disabled. If they're lying on the one side, they can't move themselves and use the other. And as a result, because they are left alone for long periods, the parents are out trying to make ends meet, they've started developing sores. So you can imagine the desperation on these families. Now they're at a point where they're about to get this help. I don't think that they want to experience another elongated period.
I'm not going to say that it's going to be an easy road. What I can commit to is that from my office, my staff, we will do all that we can to assist these family members to properly lodge their claims with the LPFF, to give them the guidance that's needed to understand the process that needs to be followed. But I would be remiss if I tried to persuade people that it's going to be quick. I'm not going to promise that. But I do promise that we will do our best to assist family members.
I know you've also been involved in efforts to try to get him, and I think his wife, to be struck off the roll of legal practitioners. Where is that process?
So the process in respect of Mr. Nonxuba is quite far advanced. We already have a suspension order against him, as I indicated, the Constitutional Court, because he appealed all of these judgments all the way up to the Constitutional Court. And the Constitutional Court made a ruling in August last year to say this is it. You are suspended from practice. The application for his striking has been served on him. The time that he had to provide his answering affidavit has passed.
Yeah.
He has not done so. So technically, he is barred from providing his answering affidavit. But again, I mean, I think you know well enough when you're dealing with attorneys, there's always loopholes and counter-arguments that can be made.
Yeah.
But we are really pushing. The matter is ripe to go to court for a striking.
The involvement of his wife? How does she get involved here?
So, look, it's difficult to say. Once again, with the lack of the accounting records and the lack of the office files, it's not easy for me to say to what extent she is involved or is not involved. They are two separate people, obviously, and they have to follow two separate processes.
Yeah.
Again, for her, the process is underway, and we're dealing with her in terms of the disciplinary processes.
You did mention that this is about medical negligence claims, which were successfully settled by the Department of Health in the Eastern Cape. And then there are road accident funds. There's a particular name there, I think a Mr. Makubela or someone. Tell us who this person is and what or where are processes in trying to recover monies from them.
So I think the person you're talking about is Mr. Mkabela, the matter that was in court recently. You know, the regrettable part, and I am an attorney by profession, even though I haven't been in practice for a long time.
Yeah.
You know, there's always means and ways to delay a process, and it's legal. The rules provide for it. So where we are with the matter of Mr. Mkabela is at this stage the court was not willing to give us an urgent order for suspension, so which means that we need to follow the normal process of setting matter down on the normal roll, and it can be substantially longer. But we are pursuing it. Usually what happens is if there's sufficient evidence, what we call to say that somebody is a risk to the public. If there's substantial risk of this person taking money and fleeing the country, things like that, that is when the court would give us an urgent order for suspension. In this case, the court, to my understanding, has found that there wasn't sufficient evidence, meaning that it has to go the normal route.
How many victims to his name?
It's difficult to say. The process, once an attorney is suspended, it's only then that the LPC can take control of his office files and his trust account or his trust records. And that's when we should be able to establish the number of potential victims. Before that, we don't have any particular right to insight into his office files.
Yeah. So it's another case where the money is taken and stashed into a trust account.
Look, I mean, to say it's stashed in the trust account is not technically correct. The trust account is where the money is supposed to be. Remember, that's where you're supposed to secure the funds of your clients. Again, without having a court order, without having looked at the files and the accounting records, it would be wrong of me to say that any money is missing.
Yeah.
We don't have that final evidence. We've got the allegations, we've got the suspicions, and that's the basis on which we approach the court, for the court to consider and then grant us the order.
Ignatius Briel, let me thank you very much for coming forward.
Thank you.
Thank you for your efforts. These families, I'm sure this is going to come as a major relief to them. And so, as promised, if you are one of those families that were the clients specifically of Mr. Zuko Nonxuba, you're welcome to contact us here at Newzroom Afrika. Our details are on the website, and we will be able to share with you the details that will be left behind by Ignatius Briel.